how to make a 100 days video. Hey everyone, I'm Crowmeda. If you're watching this video, you're most likely coming over from my main channel, or you're simply curious on how to make a 100 days video, be it in Minecraft or Ark or any other game for that matter. So welcome. If you haven't been living under a rock for the past I don't know how many years, you will know the man, the myth, the legend, TheNotable, that is behind this trend of 100 days in hardcore, specifically in his case, doing it in Minecraft. So I highly recommend to watch his series for your own personal entertainment. Nobody does it better than the man himself. I'm making this video for two reasons mainly. One, to give my audience a little bit of extra content for them to watch and see exactly what goes on behind the scenes for me to bring them their entertainment. And two, I have had comments in the past asking me exactly how long does it take to make these videos, or what software do I use? So this video will be able to answer those people way better than I would be able to in a single comment. As well as this video could potentially help somebody out trying to make their first 100 days video. So hopefully we all can have a blast with this, and some of you can also obviously learn from this. And yes, this entire explanation that I'm going to be giving is completely from my own perspective. This is not at all in any way, shape, or form a cookie cutter, all size fits all guide. Some content creators do it differently than me that I've spoken to in the past, and you will most likely find things down your road that will be working better for you. So don't take this as the be all end all way to do things, okay? You gotta adapt to what fits you best. And of course, if you are in the process of making your video and you notice that you do things slightly differently than what I'm mentioning here, or maybe drastically differently, I don't know, then be sure to leave that as a comment down below so we can get a discussion going and just interchange ideas and see exactly other people's point of view. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so we have a couple of topics to go over, and the order is as follows. 1, time management and planning. 2, game recording and story flow. 3, script writing. 4, voiceover. And finally 5, editing and thumbnail. So starting off with number 1, time management and planning. You're going to have to calculate a little bit how this is for you based on what your game you're playing. So I'm going to give an example of how it's been for me in the past. So basically, you're going to want to check exactly how long a day cycle is in whichever game you're playing. In my case, in Ark, I have been playing that the day cycle has been 43 minutes per day cycle. So simply what you do is you take your day cycle, multiply it by 100 because, you know, it's 100 days. And there you get the total amount of minutes you're going to need for recording. So in my case, 43 minutes times 100, you get a total of 4,300 minutes. And that divided by 60 results into 71.6 hours of total recording time. And you also got to keep in mind that obviously if you're playing in hardcore, which is the traditional way of playing 100 days, nowadays it hasn't become that necessary for it to be hardcore. But the traditional way being hardcore, if you die, everything you've done until that point is thrown out the window. So that kind of sucks sometimes, you know, if you're very far into recording. Let's say you die on day 75, everything you've done until that point is basically trash. So that has happened to me before. That's going to happen to pretty much everybody that attempts this kind of stuff. That's the reality of how things go. So you do need to consider that you're going to need a little bit more time, or maybe potentially even a lot more time than what you get from this calculation to see your total recording time. And again, this is only counting the required time you need to actually record your playthrough. All the other steps are going to require extra time, obviously, because editing and voiceover and scripting isn't just going to happen magically. So at the end of this guide, I'm going to be giving a little bit of a rundown of approximately the total time you're looking at. As for number 2, what I use for recording, I personally use OBS Studio for recording. It's basically the gold standard of what people use to make their videos nowadays. That is no secret. And again, this isn't a guide for your best OBS settings for your specific PC. That's something you're gonna have to do a little bit of your own homework on because everybody's PC is different. Some of you will be able to record at a way higher quality than me, some at lower qualities, and that's the way it is. I have a couple of things that I want to add though to this step, just because I feel like it's very important for people to actually do these steps, is whenever you're actually going to start a recording session, be sure to ideally always take your time to just do a very short sample recording at the beginning, so you can actually check if your microphone audio and your headset audio are actually completely up and running and working. I've had it happen to me before where I didn't do this step, and exactly at that moment, for some reason, the microphone was sounding staticky because it wasn't really plugged in correctly, or sometimes maybe you don't realize that you have your audio going to a different headset rather than what you're actually using, and it gets very frustrating. So be sure to make this always a habit to do a little sample recording before your actual recording session. Me personally, as I am recording, I do have a little notebook in which I write down exactly which day I'm playing on and a couple of really important keywords as to what I was doing, what I was thinking, just because it doesn't have to be at the moment super in detail, but I feel like if you add a little bit of your own thoughts or how you were feeling at that point really helps later writing the script. Because if you only have a couple of keywords of just static things that happened, it really takes the life out of things. So it's up to you if you want to add some more personalized thoughts that you had in the moment, but I highly recommend it. I also tend to make individual recordings for each and every single day, just because later in your folder, it's going to be much easier to organize yourself knowing exactly, okay, I have exactly 100 files of recording, and I know exactly the order in which it is saved. It is the order of days. So I highly encourage always having your start recording and stop recording set to specific hotkeys on your keyboard, just because that'll make it really easy down the road if you're taking a really long time to, let's say, record 10 days in a row. Just simply cut your recording once your day cycle has reached midnight, and you just simply keep on going right after. The storage space that you're going to need to record these 100 days is going to depend on a lot of factors, especially what quality you're recording in, of course, and with that also how long your day cycle is. In my case, how it's been, recording around 60 FPS, 1080p, 100 days of recording for me personally was around 800 gigabytes to a terabyte. This, again, will be different for you if you have longer day cycles or shorter day cycles or different recording quality. So be sure to check if you're actually going to have enough storage space for this, because I've told this many times to people how much space it requires, and they realize, oh, dang, I don't even have that much space. How should I do this? And that's when they start thinking if they're actually, ready to make one of these videos. As for story flow, as I like to call it, no matter what game you're playing, you kind of want to always consider that you want to obviously make this entertaining. And one thing which is important to note is it's ideal, or at least I found it to work best, if you don't do a single activity for too long. And let me explain it to you like this. Let's say you're building a base, be it in whichever game you're playing, and you do this for 30 days straight. Now, if you don't turn these 30 days of just purely building into something more engaging, like time lapse or adding a ton of jokes to it, it's going to get very stale very soon. So you gotta think if you're going to want to turn that into a little bit of a time lapse or something, just to make people not get too tired of the same activity. But this also goes for things that are a little bit more intense. So for example, let's say you head out in whichever game you're playing into a place which is known to be very intense, a lot of action and a lot of risk of dying. Now, you don't want to do this for too long either, because what happens? Let's say you go to this risky place and you spend 30 days there just whacking and fighting and everything, and people will get fatigued by that very soon. It'll just seem like, okay, yeah, we get it. Let's do something else, please. Because it'll also kind of devalue the intensity of the area. It'll kind of make it seem that the tense moments in your videos aren't actually that dangerous or risky if you're actually managing to fight all of this hypothetical stuff very well. So just try and remember to always just do a sort of relaxed activity for a couple of days, and then do something a little bit more intense, and then something more slow, and then again intense, and so on and so forth, just to keep a nice flow going, you know what I'm saying? My last point for story flow is to try and bring something original to the table, okay? It's no secret that the 100 days trend has sparked the creativity of a lot of content creators to make their own versions of this in multiple different games, and try to stand out a little bit. Don't try to copy someone else's form of narration. Try and be yourself. Try and throw your own thoughts, your own way of playing the game into the video. Moving on to number 3, which is script writing. You've done all the hours of fun, recording, and gaming, and grinding, all of the good stuff, and now it's time to get to work, since these 70 plus hours won't compile themselves into an entertaining video which lasts only 1 hour. So a large factor of how long your end product is going to be depends largely on your script and the way you write it. You obviously can use whatever text writing software you want to use. I personally use Word, but you can use anything really. They all pretty much do the same. You can also write this by hand if you're really down for that. I wouldn't suggest it, but hey, you do you. Taking, for example, my Arc 100 Days on Ragnarok script, okay? I start off my introduction, which tend to be quite long for a video, so yeah, I don't recommend your introductions to be as long as mine. I try and turn them into a little bit of a skit with my avatar and everything, so that's my excuse for making an introduction that long. But try to keep it nice and simple and down to the point because people want to get into the meat and potatoes of 100 Days of Surviving. As for the days themselves, you're going to go back to your notes that you've written down during your recordings and basically convert them into a short, elaborated text of what happened in the day, remembering what happened a little bit. And if needed, if you don't quite remember what exactly happened in the day, go back and watch your recording of that specific day. This, again, is why it's really practical to record days individually. For example, on day 88, my notes simply said, make more soups, prep vultures, prep ammo, get otter, on way home, pelt, which I later extended into, on day 88, we made soups to protect ourselves from the cold we'd be facing in the Ice Queen's lair, as well as prep the vultures along with the best gear I had for the cold. However, I was warned that it is way colder down there than normal, so I set out to get an otter since, it keeps you warm on your neck. I went to this cave where I once had made a base with my friend since I remembered there tended to be 2 otters at all times, and surely enough, there was an otter, and I named it Pearl. Notice how it is formulated, okay? I had my own thoughts in it, and not only that, the text for that one specific day is around 5 lines of text in a Word document, which I find personally to be a good length for a day, considering that some days are going to be much longer if you had a really intense day, or actually only 1 sentence if you had a day where you were just grinding and building a house and you're turning that into a time lapse. Notice as well that I didn't add into the recording the pelt part, since it kind of felt like that little last detail was a little bit lackluster compared to have just gotten the cute little otter. It would kind of deflate the day a little bit. So these are just things you're gonna have to pick up while you're writing and think what is a good note to end a day on or a bad note to end on. Again, I'm not perfect at this. This is kind of things that I just find to work pretty well. Number 4, voiceover. As for what I use for this step, I have a Blue Yeti microphone with a pop filter and a self-made acoustic box for clear sound. And it's okay if you don't have a mic like this. It's just that, well, the voiceover is very, very, very important because people are going to be listening to your voice and your narration for the next hour or so, depending on the length of your video. But it is very important to get this point solidly because no one wants to listen to static for even a minute, and let alone an entire hour. So be sure to try and get an environment which is pretty quiet. Get yourself your microphone a little bit further away from maybe your PC if it's pretty loud, and try to really nail this part as good as possible because your audio quality is going to be much more relevant than your actual video quality. The software that I use for my voiceover recordings is Audacity. It is a program which is completely free. I'll leave a link in the description towards their website so you can go and download that, as well as I'm going to link towards a other YouTuber's channel for pretty good settings for the Audacity program as to what filters you should apply once you're done actually recording your voiceover. So be sure to check out that video. It'll explain everything to bass boost, treble boost, normalized settings, etc., etc. I tend to personally record around 10 days at a time and export it then. So in total then I'll have 10 files, each containing 10 days of voiceover. I find this format to work pretty good for me simply because I have made mistakes in the past in my script and recorded it and put it into my editing software, and I realized that the day doesn't quite match up with what I said in the recording. and it's much easier to backtrack and correct the specific audio file than when you have it separated this way. On the last point, before I give a last final breakdown of how much time this entire process takes, we're going to talk about editing and graphics. I recently switched over and started using Adobe Premiere to edit my videos. I find that it runs pretty smoothly on my PC, as well as it having pretty quick render time, which is very beneficial. So yes, that is the application that I personally would recommend, but I understand not everyone can use that program, or they might have a different preference with a different program. So this is something that you are going to have to know what you're comfortable with. Some people will probably know a different video editing software way better and be able to make videos faster using that program, which they already know. So do your homework and see what you can afford and what will actually run pretty good on your PC. So yes, when it comes to actually editing the entire video, you're gonna have to start compiling your 70+ hours into one condensed video. And this is why I recommend doing the voiceover first and doing it in 10-day segments. At least that's how I find it to be very manageable. So what I do is basically I import one audio file, which contains, as I said, 10 days of narrated voiceover. And then I start importing, for example, in sequence, day 1, and I start cutting it and creating the video based on what I actually have in the voiceover, and so on and so forth. So again, import 10 days of audio, import your first day, cut it down to the length of how you had your narration of your first day, and then you go on to the second day, third day, fourth day, etc. As for the day numbers, when it comes to what you can see always on the top part of the screen when it comes to this kind of content, I find it that you can make this in pretty much any image editing software or drawing program. I personally now use Photoshop to make this, just because I find that Photoshop is pretty beneficial when it comes to actually adding effects to texts and making it look the way you want it to. But I've also done it before with Clip Studio Paint. It all comes down to preference, but essentially all you want to do is just simply make a canvas with the size that the video is that you've recorded prior. So if you recorded in 1920 by 1080p, just make a canvas of that same size and just start adding the image on top saying day 01 and saving it as a PNG just so your background is transparent, and just do the same process for 100 days, save them all into a separate folder. And like this, it is pretty easy just to add this to the video, since considering you're gonna have your 10 days of audio at the bottom, and on top of it is going to be your compacted days, as we just recently discussed, giving you an entire day length. And once you have an entire day completely edited, you just simply plop down the image at the top of it, drag the length the way you need it to be, and there you go. That's pretty easy. Music is always a very dodgy subject when it comes to any video creation, and you're going to need quite a lot of tracks for such a long video. So your best chances are to simply look for copyright-free music and reading the whole description if it's actually copyright-free before you start using it. And another step that I highly recommend, which I recently started doing, is once you know which music you want to use and you think it's copyright-free, run it through a online copyright checker. There are many. If you simply just look in Google for online copyright checker, you just paste the link or the name of the song or whatever, and it runs through its database to see if it's actually copyright free. And this is simply going to better your odds at not running into complications down the line. When it comes to thumbnail creation, this topic could deserve an entire video on this subject, but to keep it nice, short, and simple for you, I highly recommend to, go back to the basics. Make it colorful, make it clear. Don't use images in your thumbnail which are way too small for it to be interpreted if it's in a mobile device, for example. So try to avoid using images that are very small or very small text. And for further information, I highly recommend watching videos from Sam Woodhall, who I actually found through Alpha Gaming. I was watching Alpha Gaming's content for information on how to make better streams, better content, what gear to use, and through that channel I discovered Sam Woodhall, since they work together quite a bit. And through Sam Woodhall, in one of his streams, I just learned a ton of stuff when it comes to actually making really good, enticing thumbnails, so on and so forth. So again, these are gods when it comes to the subject, and for more information, check out the channels. There's going to be a link in the description to both of them so you can keep learning. And yeah, it all comes down to actually looking what people do in this category of content without ripping other people off. So the staple thing for any 100 days hardcore videos, to make it clear to the audience as to that this is what it is to always have 100 days hardcore pretty prominent in the thumbnail. Most of the time the hardcore is in red because that's kind of a thing that happened through Minecraft and that kind of 100 days content. So try and make the 100 days hardcore clear in the thumbnail, and the rest, get creative with it. Now to give a final roundup of how long this process has taken me in the past, and it has been approximately 120 hours per video. This includes obviously the aforementioned recording time, editing, all the way down to thumbnail creation. So to give you a brief understanding of how the total time management tends to go, at least from my perspective, and it might be similar for you, is let's say to get 100 days video content out once a month, that is logically then 120 hours divided by, let's say, 30 days, because that's approximately how long a month is. And that just comes down to 4 hours of working at this video every single day for 30 days straight. And the thing with this kind of content is, if you slack off for a single day, things start accumulating very quickly. Let's say one day there's something happen and you really just can't record or edit whichever stage you're in this whole process. Those 4 hours go to the next day. And so one day you're gonna have to want to catch up, or say, okay, I'm gonna maybe start working at this 5 hours every single day to hope and regulate my time again. And you will notice that if you don't try and keep up with this, you are going to be consumed by time crunch, at least if you're a person like me that likes to keep to their schedules. And that's just the way it is. If you want to keep making this kind of content, it's going to require a lot of dedication. It's going to require a lot of hours spent editing until 2, 3, or 4 in the morning to be able to meet your deadlines. And sometimes it's not that great or glamorous, because you're thinking, I wish I'd right now be doing something else rather than editing until 4 a.m. And you gotta really think, how does this fit into your life? Is this content really something that you can manage? And I'm not saying that in a way to discourage anyone. It's just I would really like for people to know what they're getting into before they bite off something that is too large for them to chew, if you try to get what I'm putting down, you know what I'm saying? I wish I knew this maybe before I started making this content, and it's starting to work really well on the main channel. And yeah, you really got to think about it, because we're all human beings and not all of us are full-time content creators. We have, obviously, as well as just like any other person, we have social obligations, we have friends, we have families, we have relationships, jobs. In my case, right now as of recording this, I have university, which takes up a lot of my time. And you really got to see if this is something for you. One way, obviously, to lighten this load is to just simply give yourself more time until you upload your next 100 days video. That is completely fine. I'm not saying that you need to release a video like this once every month. That could potentially lead quite a lot to burnout, because if you're in exam week or something, it's going to get really rough. Or you simply hire an editor, which, based on how things are going, I'm going to have to do pretty soon. And so if you have any more questions on this topic or anything else, feel free to join my Discord server down below or leave me a comment. I love engaging with you in every way possible, and I'll look forward to any other inquiries that you have. I hope this helped you in your path to potentially making your own 100 days video, or simply provided you with a little bit of backstage entertainment to what goes behind the scenes to make the Crowmeda 100 days videos. So with all that being said, I hope you liked it. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you very soon, my lovelies. Bye-bye. Behind the scenes, for one single exported audio file is in the comments so we can all, get a discussion. My last point for